All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is easily one of the most intensely debated and honestly most fascinating character arcs in the entire Yaenddarr Chronicles. We're talking about the awakening of Nocturne Veiler. This isn't just your standard fantasy power-up. This is a deeply complex story about profound trauma, identity, and the literal manipulation of time and shadow. Over the course of this gripping five-chapter narrative, we get to see a man literally stepping out of the wreckage of his own broken history to forge a completely new existence in the mystical world of Yaenddarr.
To really get what makes Nocturne tick, we've got to start with this absolute gut punch of a line from the source material. This world gave you a name without sorrow. Right out of the gate, the stakes are sky high. You see, this isn't just a story about some mage learning new spells. It's about rebirth. It's about a man's desperate, almost obsessive rejection of a deeply traumatic past. He arrives in Yaenddarr looking for a completely clean slate, you know? He just wants to shed this profound sorrow that used to define his entire existence. Okay, let's dive into this duality because it's the engine driving his whole arc. It's like night and day. Before Yaenddarr, he was known as Maggus, or sometimes Janus, and that version of him, completely defined by chaos. He wielded this unstable, chaotic dark matter. He was entirely driven by overwhelming grief, and get this, he was actually known as the guy who fundamentally broke time itself. Now, contrast that with who he's choosing to be now, Nocturne Veiler. He presents himself as this being of purified shadow. He's got stable, absolute control. He is unburdened, he's calm, he's deliberate. He basically insists that his new identity has zero connection to the madness of his past.
And we see this play out over a really tight 5-chapter awakening arc. We'll be walking through Chapter 1, Arrival, Chapter 2, The Lost Hour, Chapter 3, The Cathedral, Chapter 4, The Hourfall, and finally wrapping up with Chapter 5, Scythe Awakening.
So let's kick things off with Chapter 1, The Shadow Time Arrival.
The cinematic visuals here are just wild. Nocturne literally steps onto this twilight plane through a rift of cracking violet light. And right away, he shows us exactly how his new shadow time magic works. Remember, he isn't out of control anymore. To prove it, he summons a sphere of dark matter right in his palm, and it's totally purified. It's perfectly obedient. He effortlessly crushes it into a sigil on his arm, basically just flexing his absolute command over it. For anyone who remembers the old chaotic Maggus days, seeing this level of control is honestly pretty jarring. We also get to see him execute these things called time-fractured teleports. He literally dissolves into streaks of violet light to snap instantly across the battlefield. Oh, and most importantly, he summons his weapon, the Abyssal Scythe, which is described as a blade made of frozen time. The message is clear. He has arrived, and he is the one pulling the strings.
But of course, you can't run forever. Which brings us to Chapter 2, Echoes of the Past. As he's exploring, Nocturne runs into something that absolutely should not exist in a purified world like Yaenddarr. It's called a lost hour. So what is that? It's a temporal anomaly. It shows up as this flickering, shifting silhouette made completely out of fragmented time. It is literally an echo of a collapsed timeline just wandering around, and here's the truly unsettling part. This anomaly actually recognizes him.
It speaks to him in these creepy, layered echoes, dropping this haunting accusation. You were Maggus. You were Janus. You were the one who broke time. And what's truly fascinating here is how stubbornly Nocturne reacts. I mean, here is a literal ghost of his past calling him out, and he just doubles down. He grips his scythe super tight, absolutely insisting that he is Nocturne Veiler, and he carries zero sorrow. He actually blasts the anomaly into pieces with purified dark matter just to shut it up. That is some deep, deep denial right there.
Let's move into Chapter 3, The Clockless Cathedral.
Following the trail of that temporal disturbance, Nocturne discovers this impossible piece of architecture, the Clockless Cathedral. It's this towering structure that actually predates the world itself. But get this, it's not made of stone or glass. It is built entirely from suspended minutes, frozen tears, and dead hours. Just take a second to imagine that eerie, tragic beauty of a place like that. Inside, the pillars contain these suspended moments in time. There's one deeply unsettling pillar that traps a young girl, frozen right in the middle of a laugh. It's literally a graveyard for time. And sitting right in the middle of it all, on a throne of fractured hours, is the mysterious keeper of the Clockless. Now, the keeper confronts Nocturne and tells him something crazy. He says Nocturne is the only person to have ever escaped an event called the Hourfall. But Nocturne genuinely has no memory of it. His mind has completely wiped it. So I have to ask you, based on everything we've looked at so far, what exactly is the Hourfall? And why was it so horrific that Nocturne's own mind had to erase it? Well, the Keeper delivers the chilling answer. The Hourfall was the moment you broke time to save someone you loved. Just let that sink in for a second. The absolute core of Nocturne's suppressed trauma isn't that he was some evil monster. It's that he destroyed a timeline. He destroyed a whole world out of a desperate, totally failed attempt to save someone he loved.
And that plunges us right into Chapter 4, Surviving the Hourfall. The Keeper literally shatters the cathedral around them, and suddenly Nocturne is thrown violently back into his own erased memory. He finds himself standing in a dying city, one with silver towers and glass bridges, while the sky is just tearing itself apart with violet lightning. And right there, trapped in a field of silver grass, suspended in a frozen half-second, is the girl, the exact same girl from the cathedral pillar. As this massive vortex of collapsing time descends to devour her, the old Nocturne, Maggus, completely panics. In a desperate bid to stop the vortex, he unleashes wild, chaotic, incredibly unstable dark matter. But it backfires. Instead of saving her, his volatile magic is the spark that shatters the world. He has to stand there and watch the timeline completely collapse. He failed her. When the flashback ends and he is thrown back onto the floor of the cathedral, Nocturne is fundamentally changed. He finally remembers the devastating, crushing weight of what he did. Now, he could have easily just broken down right here, but he doesn't. Instead, we see this incredible, dramatic shift in his mindset. He looks at the Keeper and says, "I will not run from the past. I will not drown in it. I will master it." It is such a powerful moment. He goes from being a guy in total denial, frantically hiding behind this mask of purity, to a man who is staring his darkest failure in the face and deciding to take absolute control of it. Which sets the stage perfectly for our finale. Chapter 5, Scythe of the Second Hour. As he's leaving the cathedral, Nocturne has to face one final test, a shadow clone echo of himself. This echo basically represents the version of him that is still terrified of the past. And it's a nightmare to fight, because it perfectly mirrors every single one of Nocturne's physical strikes and teleports. It feels like an unwinnable fight. And this brilliantly illustrates Nocturne's tactical genius and his brand new mastery over time, because instead of trying to outpunch it, Nocturne does something wild. He literally slips exactly 1 single second backward in time. He temporarily steps behind the echo and then swings his scythe, severing the echo's moment in time, completely bypassing its physical body altogether. It is just an incredible, mind-bending display of temporal combat. And because he is finally, willingly walking with his past instead of running away from it, his weapon responds to that acceptance. It evolves into the Scythe of the Second Hour. It becomes this longer, sharper crescent of frozen time, and now it glows with a dual light. It's got his signature dark shadow intertwined with the bright hour light of the timeline he broke. The lore describes it as vibrating with immense temporal pressure. He is no longer just some shadow mage playing with dark matter. He has become the absolute master of broken seconds. So, the big takeaway here is this. Nocturne Veiler arrived in Yaenddarr running for his life from a broken timeline, hiding behind this fragile facade of emotionless perfection. But by actually facing the catastrophic, heartbreaking failure of the Hourfall, he didn't revert back to the chaotic, unhinged Maggus. Instead, he leveled up. He forged a synthesis, becoming a being of supreme tactical control and terrifying temporal power. Which leaves us with a highly provocative question going forward. Now that Nocturne Veiler commands both shadow and the broken seconds of his past, and he's wielding a scythe that literally cuts through time itself, whose timeline is he going to sever next in the Yaenddarr Chronicles? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.